Welcome to Playbook Broken. The old playbooks just don't work anymore. Marketing is changing faster than most people can keep up, thanks to AI, shifting buyer behavior, and a business world that's being rewritten in real time. If you've ever looked at your tried and true tactics and thought, yeah, that's not hitting like it used to, you're in the right place. On Playbook Broken, we're talking to disruptors, operators, and unapologetically honest voices about what's next and how we actually get there. No matter where you're watching or listening, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share Playbook Broken. Welcome back to Playbook Broken. Today, I've got somebody really special I think you're going to like. Melissa Reeve is a 25-year marketing vet. Sounds familiar. I think we must be about the same age. Helping both organizations achieve hyper-adaptive performance, which I can't wait to talk about that. That's a great word. She's former VP of marketing at Scaled Agile, co-founder of both the Agile Marketing Alliance and marketing Frontier.ai. So she's clearly busy. And as if she wasn't busy enough, she's writing a book on AI. And she also hosts a marketing AI radio podcast. Melissa, welcome to Playbook Broken. So great to see you. It's been a while.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we were talking just before about the book, and I didn't mention the title, but tell us a little bit about that. Like, because I'm sure it's very exciting. Is it your first book?
It is my first book. The title is Hyper-Adaptive: Rewiring Your Organization to Become an AI Native Enterprise. And I felt like there was just this vacuum in the marketplace. Everybody was talking about the tools. And of course, my background is in marketing, but also the organizational change management piece. And because I have this exposure to DevOps and Agile and Lean and systems thinking, my mind immediately went to, oh, we've been here before. You know, we have seen things automated in factories. We've seen them. If you're not familiar with DevOps, it's basically taking software deployment and automating that. And I thought, I think there's some patterns that we can pull on. And I think I could articulate where I think organizations need to go to get from what I call a linear organization, which is strategy to execution, concepts to delivery. That type of organizing is great for 1950 and not so great for the age of AI. And so I said, we need to go from these linear organizations to what I call a hyper-adaptive organization. So the ability to sense and respond and adapt as AI also senses and responds and adapts. And we need to restructure our organizations. So that's a long way of saying the book is helping organizations continually adapt in the age of AI.
Amazing. There's so much to talk about there. I have been having a similar related conversation here about AI, both at Third Door Media and our organization and the larger SEMrush organization. And AI literacy has been at the tip of my tongue for a lot. Like those words have been in my mouth all week. And I'm curious, can you talk about that a little bit? Like at the individual level, AI literacy and the ability to use these tools, which I totally agree has repeated itself through different ages. AI is just the current flavor. As an individual contributor or a team leader, how do you even ground yourself in that?
Yeah, and it looks so different. I think that's what's unique about this concept of AI literacy is we have been conditioned to absorb learning from the sage on the stage, right? That was all of our kindergarten through high school, through college. And along comes this thing called AI, where it's really experiential learning. And we are learning from each other. We're learning by doing. And so how do you as an individual fire up that curiosity in yourself? How do you as a leader fire that up in your teams and your organizations? And I've got some answers for that, but that's really the concept.
The show structure here is that I've got these different segments that I've been kind of experimenting with. Obviously, you're the third guest, so I'm figuring it out. We'll see. But you when we talked before, you had sort of picked the new rules segment, which is great. And I know that you have an incredibly hot take. And just to set this up, right, this show is sort of the reason it's called Playbook Broken. The reason why I think it's an interesting topic is exactly what you're about to talk about, which is the old playbooks are broken or breaking as we speak. You know, this week at Google I/O, they announced a whole bunch of stuff. The biggest thing from the search standpoint, part of the world that I live in, was that AI mode is going to be kind of more generally available. It's going to be available on desktop. And there's been this persistent discussion about, is SEO dead? Is it changing? What does it look like in the future? I mean, the SEO playbook, as one of a number of marketing playbooks that we have at our disposal, might be fully broken at this point. We're about to find out, right? But like, as an organization, as an individual, what do you do about that? And so, but what I loved about your hot take is unto itself playbook. So please, let's get into new rules. What do you got for us here?
Well, I mean, I think it's such an interesting example, this notion that SEO is going to change and the playbooks around it. Because when you think about a playbook really, the underlying assumption of a playbook is the world is standing still. And it's going to stand still long enough for us to actually develop a playbook around that. And then we have some predictability in that the playbook is going to stay valid for the next X amount of time. Right. And so that means it's going to stay solid for the next month, the next year, the next 2 years. And I don't know if that's the world we're playing in anymore. And so, what if instead of even thinking about playbooks, we start to think about guardrails? And we start to think about those guardrails of, okay, we know we have some branding guardrails. We know where the guardrails are today around best practices. And it also implies that our governance has to change a little bit too, the governance that guides those guardrails. And instead of saying we're going to meet once a year, we're going to revisit our brand once every 3 years, how about we shift over into dynamic governance? That we're meeting every week, every month, whatever that more dynamic governance is, and we're populating the new governance rules. Hey, this is where the brand is at today, into a GPT-like experience. We're populating our playbooks, our guardrails into a GPT-like experience, and the role of the people who are executing at the front lines, whether that's an agent or whether that's a person, is constantly pinging those GPTs saying, hey, where are the guardrails today? Where is the governance today?
I don't even know where to start with all that other than to sort of reflect back, kind of what I said earlier, which is you've got technological change afoot. It's here. It's not coming. It's here. And you've got organizations that are under enormous amounts of pressure. People are under enormous amounts of pressure to sort of like figure out how to use these tools. Let's start here. Have we ever seen anything like, in the modern age, have we ever seen anything like this? I mean, people will invoke things like the automobile or the printing press, but like in modern days, in my way of thinking, the internet itself is the thing that, I think I look at in my career, in our lifetimes, that like really changed. It was something before and it was something after, but that something before and something after took legitimately, you know, from a commercial standpoint, let's say the internet really became useful in 95, 96. And by 2001, 2002, it was sort of embedded everywhere. It seems like things speed up. So like from an adoption standpoint, have we seen anything like this, or am I thinking about this the wrong way? Or am I thinking about the right way?
Well, you and I have both lived through the internet, and I feel like from a vibe standpoint, it's vibing the same. Like there's the buzz is there, and we're all like excited again, and we're like, this is going to change everything. I'm a fan of Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. And so I think there's only so fast that we as humans can absorb things. And so the technology might be moving faster than we as humans can even absorb it and put it to use. I don't know about you, but I find myself exhausted at the end of the day because everything is coming at me so fast, whether it's the evolution of AI or the output of AI itself, that it certainly feels different in that regard.
I am exhausted the end of the day, but I'm also wildly excited in a way, like this, I think like feeds me. My particular insanity is that I feed a little bit on chaos. I like chaos, and I'm really a curious person. Like that's kind of the combo is my superpower.
Yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, I'm exhausted. And I think that, there's people who are just exhausted, and they're not excited by this because they're feeling like, these tools are powerful. This change is scary. Companies appear to be, either laying off people or changing, like there's so much changing. It feels a little frantic right now. And then, how dare you try to keep up with the pace of even the news on a daily basis? It's like, well, now
Mhm.
there's VO and there's ChatGPT 4.1 and, and, I think a lot of us haven't done the work to understand, like, how do these things actually work?
Mhm.
And what are the opportunities that are coming at us? The big one that I heard this week that I had not, to my discredit, I hadn't really considered, how important, let me rephrase that. I know how important context windows are. They're everything. It's essentially
Mhm.
short-term memory for an LLM, right? And the larger the context window, the more stuff you can sort of do with the risk of hallucinations and things kind of going down quickly, right?
Mhm.
As the context window scales. And what's interesting is I heard on a podcast today, Gemini 2.5 Pro, I think, has a 2 million context
Yeah.
window. Well, the new, I don't know if you heard this yet, the new GPT that they're like in testing, it sounds like it's already done. They just haven't released it, is 10 million.
Wow, cool.
So 10 million apparently is enough to like store everything you'll ever do in your entire life. And so
That's
like,
pretty.
but it's like, well, what does that mean? Like,
Mm.
okay, so now we have an AI that just doesn't process prompts, but actually knows everything about me. And I could point it at my home server and be like, here's my old Yahoo account. I don't know. And so like, I think that's part of what's challenging here from a human standpoint is like, got it. There's a lot of change. It's stressful, but like even the art of the possible, like I
Mhm.
went to a hackathon a few weeks ago and in about 9 hours created something that, is quite sophisticated and also very cool looking and is a lot of code. Like it generated a lot of code. Now I'm not a coder. There is something different about this technology is what I'm
Mhm.
saying. Like previous technology things, it's the autonomous nature, I think is what I'm getting at. And that's the part that I think makes your notion of what happens to playbooks kind of fascinatingly like challenging, right? Like, so the notion, like when I think of a playbook, I think of, I don't know, a football coach on the sideline with like a, with a big book
Mhm.
on like, what play do we want to run next? Oh, it's this
Mhm.
situation, very linear.
Mhm.
But I think what I think you're getting at, might be interpreting, but what you're getting at is like that world's gone. Like a linear
Yeah.
playbook is like, you're too slow and you're not innovating enough. And so how do you reorganize our minds to work and live in a totally fluid environment
Mhm.
where you've got effectively a super intelligence helping you at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it's the magic genie, right? And so it's going from that static things are sta it's things are static to they are dynamic. And so I'm thinking about that SEO expert who wakes up today, has their, I'm gonna call it a GPT, but it could be an agent who's constantly monitoring for the latest information, what's changed today in terms of SEO, what are the best practices right at this moment? And says, I'm building a landing page if landing pages still exist. How do I optimize it for this moment? And gets the reply and says, "Great, can you optimize this according to the best practices today?" And when you think about that mindset, it's totally different than the mindset that we're operating with today. And even just from a power structure perspective, I as an individual have a knowledge. Well, actually, you don't now. So what are you, the human, bringing to that equation? Well, you are checking the knowledge. Did this thing go off the rails? That doesn't quite seem right. Let me try and validate that a little bit. So we're the check. We're the sanity around this. But I think people are going to have to let go of control. They're going to have to let go of power structures and and that what does that mean for work? We don't know. We don't know.
I think what you're saying is not just provocative, but true. And we've already seen it in some instances already. And I think, the human aspect of this is the part that I've been thinking most about lately, which is how do you reorganize a team, a company, an organization around a fluid environment where some leaders are maybe a little less flexible than other leaders, right? There are some people, there's some boss, you got a boss who like, I want to see every word. I want to check everything. Like, I think, like that kind of thing. Or like, on the creative side, let's take a creative marketing campaign where, you really know that you want to push the bounds. You have the creativity, maybe be a little more edgy but like
Mhm.
today it's linear, right? It's like, well, we have to make is it edgy or is it not edgy? Well, what if it's all of that? What if it's edgy for the people who like edge and not edgy for people who don't like edgy? And how do you execute that? And we've had tools, but they're mechanical tools today to do that, right? You can use a
Mhm.
platform to sort of A/B test or whatever. But what you're describing is a completely fluid environment perhaps with full
Mhm,
automation being, okay, the AI knows our brand standards. The system
mhm,
knows that this event happened. It
mhm.
knows how we've trained it, how we would respond as humans. So let's just let it go do its thing. Because I think that part of the resistance to this is a resistance to change from an organizational like if I allow you, employee X234, to automate your work, what do I
Mhm.
need you for? But also, what happens when something goes wrong? Like, I think you're
Yeah.
talking about a wildly new world, basically.
Well, and that's where I wanna slow down the conversation because I feel like it's not helpful to say all the jobs are going away. It's helpful to paint that future picture. And because we do have this precedent in factory automation, we have this precedent in DevOps that I pull on. And what we know is that not all jobs are automatable. And I also like to break down this notion of a job. And jobs are made up of tasks and decisions and processes. And what we're really talking about with AI right now is the automation of tasks. You know, the scenario we've described is much more of some of the tasks, some of the decisions, right, and automating some of the processes. What happens then is I believe people will go from doing a lot of the work to managing machines that do the work. And that's where the ego part comes into play because people are used to going, especially in marketing, they're used to going up the chain of like, I'm a junior copywriter, now I'm a senior copywriter, and now I'm the head of content creation. And it implies a laddering of expertise. I still think we'll need a laddering of expertise, but it will be how do you prompt the expertise will be how do you manage the machines and how do you what's your expertise in tweaking the machine to do exactly what you want it to do and get the output that is good and how who's determining good.
Yeah, that's right, right. Because like who's determining good? I mean, is it an outcome that determines whether something's good or bad? Did we or did we not achieve this goal, or is it you just didn't do it the way I wanted you to do it, and therefore, you know, what I mean, like I think that that's part of the challenge of management and again, Martech's law and Kahneman, and we're at that weird convergence moment. Clearly, the tech, like if the tech stopped developing today, everything we just talked about still is applicable. Like there's no
Yeah.
like the genie's out.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the party. And so, um, like, how would you describe that sort of operating system or that mode, that mental model for an organization in the present, but also
Mhm.
obviously in the very near future when, tomorrow there's some new innovation that comes out. You go, oh my God, didn't know you could do that. Like, what do you call that? Is there a name for it?
Well, I mean, that's the whole premise of this notion of hyperadaptivity. And if you'd be so kind, I'll chat through the stages that I see between where we're at today and
Love
where
it.
we go to get there. So, we talked about this notion of a linear organization and we just described it, right? Junior to senior to content director, that's a linear organization. And I think the first thing that happens is we get some foundational elements in place. We see that, right? We see these AI councils coming online. We see the governance coming online. Then we start to take AI and we infuse AI into those tasks. So we have jobs are made out of tasks and processes and decisions. We start to shift the culture around decision making. We start to shift the culture around our processes, stitching those individual task automations together. I think that's all within our our ability to visualize right now. The step after that is where I think the change really starts to take place. You start to stitch those automations in place, and now you have automated workflows. When you have automated workflows, that's where the jobs really start to change. You start to see people move from doing the work to automating the work and managing the automations. This whole change, I think, is going to take, I don't know, 2 to 5 years for us to really get into that place where we're automating what I call marketing pipelines. Now, after that, I think what we start to do is we start to see people putting sophisticated telemetry in place and orchestration layers. How do you orchestrate your different agents? And I think that's where we move from more of a hierarchical organization to one organized around these value streams, your customer journeys. And so we are, I think, in that point, so think 5 years out, now starting to restructure our organizations around automated value streams. So that's how we get from here to this future. And then right after that is the hyper adaptability, where the machines are helping us to sense and respond and evolve our organizations, evolve our value streams, and where we don't know what happens after that, but we've set our systems up in a way that they can be much, much more fluid.
I think that that kind of connects in my mind a bunch of dots that I hadn't directly thought about. I'm sort of observing from a side. Just even thinking about, let's say in the short term, right? What is there a challenge with current leadership who don't understand that framework and that progression, and they're going to resist it? And is that where you start to see kind of empires fall, empires rise, like the rise and fall of big companies who kind of can't get out of their own way because they can't release that kind of control? That, like, even that control piece feels um very scary in an organization that like has a large legal team, has HIPAA compliance, privacy compliance, all that stuff.
Absolutely. We will see more Blockbuster and Nokia moments. We've been here before, right? We know that the giants will fall. We know that there will be organizations that can't keep up, can't make the change, and it will be those AI native organizations, just like it was those digital native organizations that disrupted the Blockbusters and the Nokias. It will be AI native organizations who will disrupt the existing giants. Some of the existing giants have seen this coming. I like to pull on Unilever. And Unilever, giant organization, they serve 3.4 billion people a day, and they have been preparing for AI since 2016. They have incredible programs. They're creating digital twins of their products. So imagine that you create a shampoo, and instead of testing the formulas in the lab, you're creating it in your AI-driven digital twin, and you are creating the packaging for that in a digital twin, and you're putting it out there in the market, in testing it before it's even gone into production. And so that's one way they're using AI. But the part I like to describe even more than that is what they're doing with the people. So they've taken the stance that says, we know jobs are going to change. They've taken the stance that says, we've hired good people. And they've developed a program that they call Future Fit. And they say, this is a program that will walk alongside you as your role is changing. And we are going to support you as AI comes into the organization and as your role starts to shift. I feel like that is such a progressive way of thinking about AI and supporting people through the change, even as the rest of the world is saying, "Oh, all the jobs are going to go away."
The presumption there is fascinating, and kudos to Unilever and the leadership there, and the belief that, hey, we've already hired good people,
Mhm.
but we're operating in uncertain environments, so let's walk alongside them and help them. This was a similar conversation I had this week multiple times around our AI council. Like, what are we want to do with the AI council? How does it work? So that future fit is a fascinating concept. I think one of the interesting things is it's that presumption, and we all should have this presumption, but do we? I don't know. Have we hired the best people? Do we already have the best people? And if we do, grass isn't greener, because everybody, like, there's nobody on the planet that knows what's about to happen. I mean, as incredible as your framework is, like, you could be wrong. I don't think you are, but
Yeah.
like, we don't know. We have to play it out. That is fascinating. What about, if you're a high school kid or a college kid or parents of young, like, how do you think about the future of work from standpoint of the future generation of who's going to run these companies? Is it just that AI native, like, okay, these kids are going to grow up in a world where all this exists, and so it's going to be more native, and it's really like, are we going through what we went through in the '90s? Like, like, my bosses in the '90s were like, "What's this internet thing? It's not even a thing." It's like, no, it's a thing. Like, and we tell you it's a thing right now. So, like, is that part of what we have to learn as a society? Like, how do we raise kids in an AI native world?
Well, my sister's a second grade teacher, and I'm very encouraged when she talks about teaching her students. And she's in rural Kansas. It's not like she's in some sort of, like really forward thinking charter school in the middle of New York City or something. She's in rural Kansas teaching her students about the growth mindset. And she's teaching her students about emotional intelligence, right? And so she's setting the stage for human beings who can connect with each other, who can operate in a fluid environment. And that's what gives me hope, because really all of us, I think about my own career, and I've had to reinvent myself several times. Like, that reinvention cycle might be accelerated, but I don't think I don't think it's a mystery, right? I don't think it's something that we haven't encountered before.
Yeah, she's doing God's work, right? Like
Yeah.
anybody who's in that, who's doing that, she's so shout out to Melissa's sister, the second grade teacher in Kansas. That's amazing. Before we wrap up and move on, like any points that you were thinking about that you wanted to sort of hit in terms of like playbooks, like I think your premise here, and I appreciate it very much, is like looking at how to evolve a current playbook might be the wrong way to think about this. Now, certainly tactically in the next short time frame, sure, we can
Mhm.
optimize playbooks. But what you're suggesting is there is not one way to do this. I think you used the term in your notes to me, Taylorism, which I had not thought about in ages. Um, but what you're suggesting is that playbooks of the future are more like Google real-time GPS versus like a set of steps. Do I have that right?
I think you have it right. And I think before we move on, I just want to circle back to our initial conversation around learning, because so many leaders, so many individuals are thinking about, how do I learn AI? And what I'm seeing, we all know that learning is changing, right? We're learning from YouTube. We've got this just in time, just for me type of learning. And what we want to fuel is what I call learning contagion. And that is this notion of social learning. And I'm gonna pull on an example from PricewaterhouseCoopers. And what they did is they structured what they called prompting parties. And that did two things. One is it surfaced a whole lot of use cases at the same time. Two, the prompting parties were with people in their own area, and they could exchange notes. And they moved from like 30 prompting parties to 400 prompting parties. So it scales in a short amount of time. And they were able to train, I forget how many people, but tens of thousands of people through this notion of prompting parties. And I think when we're thinking about and struggling with this notion of AI literacy, we our mind goes to those traditional playbooks of, what kind of class can I take? When I think we need to shift the playbook and we need to think about, how do we enable social learning? How do we enable learning contagion?
As a former PwCer myself, I'm sad that that's the one, like what you just said is like, wow, I wish I was there for that. That sounds like a lot of fun. The rest of it, I think I could take it or leave it. Prompting parties, I might have to just straight up steal that. I mean, that's a genius idea. I mean, as is the notion of social learning. As I said, I did this hackathon. The hacking part was great, but it was the discussion, right? It was what are you doing? How are you doing that? Like, oh, what does that look like? What prompt did you use? What model did you use? How the heck did you get that to work? I think there's something really interesting. And yeah, fundamentally, education and how we learn is definitely shifting. All right, Melissa, this is amazing. The last section here is what I call force yourself. And really what I'm after here is like, you as an individual, we all face challenges, right? We all have our unique, like, how do I do this? How do I wake up in the morning? Some of us have, mental issues or
Hmm.
the ability to focus, but like for you, like, tell me about how you force yourself to get big things done. What's the process you go through? How do you sort of push through that wall and just straight up, like at some point, like, I got to get this done. I'm gonna force myself to do it. Like, what's your version of that?
So my version of that is to not think about the whole thing at once. And I know that it's as, this isn't any new wisdom, right? It's eating the elephant one bite at a time. And so, like, the book that I'm writing, I just started with an outline. I was way intimidated. And anytime I've tried to initiate a book, and I've tried several times now, um, I tried to do too much. But I literally woke up at 2 a.m. and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start writing down some thoughts. And I know that my brain works in bullet form really well. So I thought, let me just do bullet points, what all is going in my head. And then I was able to, I ended up with an outline that was 134 pages. I was like, oh, okay. So there's a there. And then I was able to leverage AI to help put that into some sort of structure that made sense for a book. There's a role called a development editor I didn't even know about. So I had AI be a development editor to help me structure that. And in every day that it gets hard, and believe me, this week has been really hard with the writing. I'm having trouble focusing. One is I will give myself some grace. So I think that's another key component to just take a break, just to set it down for a minute and revisit it. And honestly, I call myself a recovering type A. And so it's hard, right? Like I want to just keep driving. And so that's the flip side of that coin, right? Is how do you throttle yourself back so you don't burn out? Um, yeah,
It's amazing. Yeah. Wow. I just love that question. And I think it's just so interesting to get inside the minds of people who really are getting things done. You're clearly getting things done. You're a busy, productive person. So thanks for those reflections. Eating the elephant is a great one. It's one to always remember. And I learned that lesson about putting things down a few weeks ago. It was like, I literally overloaded the system. And it
mm,
was like, I need to walk away right now. And I literally went for a walk, and it was like, no headphones, no podcast. Like I need to be myself for a minute. So those are great reflections. Wow. The role of AI here, changing organizations, the playbook. I really appreciate the perspective here on, sure, short-term playbooks. Yeah, we can improve them, but like long-term playbooks are a dance, a coordinated dance with a lot of people. And there's some subtle changes to it. So that's an incredible learning. The conversation is great. I guess my last thing is, before we go, tell us where people can find you. Where's like, how do we interact? How do we learn more? How do we get a copy of the book? All that good stuff.
yeah, appreciate the opportunity. So marketingfrontier.ai is one avenue. I've also just fired up directly for the book hyperadaptive.solutions. So you can get on the wait list there, and hoping to get the book out fall of this year, but I'm at the whim of publishers as well. So we'll see.
I wish you the best of luck, and that's it for Playbook Broken. If you have comments, feedback on the show, obviously it's an evolving format. We'll figure out if people like this or not. Leave a comment, find me on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me today.